head to the next amazing panel on building for the next billion. Isn't it curious to know how to bag the volumes of $1 billion in revenue? With the same curiosity, I invite the one who made billions making bus travel digital and ready to go from our pockets, Mr. Phanindra Sama, founder, Red Bus, to moderate the session. Let's give him a huge round of applause and welcome him on this stage. Please have a seat. I also introduce the panelists for this discussion, Mr. Aprameya Radhakrishna, co-founder and CEO of KOO. Welcome, sir. Mr. Suraj Saharan, co-founder, Delivery. We request you to please join us on the stage. Mr. Gunjan Patidar, Chief Technology Officer of Zomato. And last but not least, Ms. Deepti Dutt, Head Strategic Initiatives, Public Sector, Amazon. I now hand over the session to Mr. Phanindra Sama.
Guys, please take your chairs. क्या यार आप निशांत को नहीं बोले हमें बोल रहे हो? She's saying half an hour we have to end the session. So anyway, we'll try that. So how many of you are building for the next billion? Right? Oh, okay, good. Okay. And how many of you want free AWS credits? Yeah. Okay, so that's Deepti. So Deepti ko patana. Okay, so thanks for staying back. We have a great panelists here to build for the next billion. First is Gunjan. Gunjan is a co-founder and CTO of Zomato, and you all know Zomato. The new thing in Zomato is the next billion users, how they're going to the smaller towns and serving there. When I heard that first, it was a big, like a surprise to me. कि वहाँ पर कौन आके आपके ऐप में they will book a biryani which will be delivered like from 2 kilometers away from them. But let's hear their insights and learnings and how they catering to the next billion users. Right now, Zomato has about 2,000 plus, 1,000 plus pin codes, cities, 1,000 plus cities may they are delivering, and the pin codes will be a lot more. Next we have Suraj. If you have traveled on the highway, you would have not missed the amazingly looking trucks, the delivery trucks. Many times my kids have asked, "Ye delivery kya hai?" They're like so awed by the trucks. But even beyond that, they have a great business. Both of them are public companies, Zomato and Delivery. They do deliveries into almost every corner of our country. Then we have Deepti. She's the person for our credits, AWS credits. But Deepti has a fantastic background in making solutions for the next billion users. Unlike the others here, Deepti has actually partnered with the governments to deliver those solutions, whether it is Aadhaar or smart cities. Deepti has done it all. So we'll love to take your insights on how we can create solutions for the next billion. Then last we have Aprameya. Aprameya is the founder of KOO. How many of you know KOO? Almost everybody. Yeah. So Aprameya is the founder of KOO, our own social media platform. So let's hear from them. So where do we start? So Aprameya, over to you. So why did you feel like building for the next billion, where vernacular languages is possible on Twitter, right? I can go and our minister puts the Telugu tweets on Twitter. So why is there a need for another platform like KOO?
Yeah. So I'll just get into some, high-level inciting on how social media networks are to be frameworked, right? So if you look at it, India is mostly on Facebook and WhatsApp, right? Most of India. And if you look at Facebook and WhatsApp, they are actually closed networks, which means for the average person in India, you're adding your friends and family on Facebook and friends and family on WhatsApp, right? And your voice doesn't go beyond those 20, 30 people, and maximum on a WhatsApp group of 256, but now 512 people, right? So the voice of India on the open internet, right? Open internet examples are Twitter, are kind of Instagram if you don't lock your account, right? So on the open internet, having your voice heard is a new phenomena for 95% plus Indians. A person who does not know English cannot actually tag the minister of any state or their favorite actor or their favorite cricketer or even connect with people beyond who they know on any other platform apart from Coup, right? So that is the white space that we actually occupy. It's not obvious to the naked eye because everything looks like social media. But being able to create new connections and being able to reach your voice to anybody in the country was something that wasn't solved ever before because everybody takes a very English first approach. So bridging the gap between, you know, English speaking India and the rest of India. Like before Coup, I had never expressed myself in any other language apart from English on the internet. And I'm sure in this room, most of you would agree. Like, you know, we are English citizens of the internet. And it's one global network. And that global network is probably 10-20% of the world. 80% of the world is not connected there. So in order to connect them, to give them a voice, for them to be able to experience the power of the internet in a true sense is why we created it.
Sure. So what's the insight here? There are millions of users, so they're coming for some reason. And for the people from the other side, right? I mean, Twitter and Coup appear the same. Like I said, we can go and put the language there and etc. So what's that insight? What's that insight that we can take away? Like, how do we get the courage to build, a vernacular app for the next billion? Like, can I build a WhatsApp for the next billion?
Yeah.
Saying that, hey, it's Angrezi, so let me do something for the next billion.
So for us, the advantage is the fact that, you know, this is an untapped market. Like microblogging, sharing of thoughts and opinions on Twitter is restricted to 1% of India, maximum 2% of India, who are talking amongst themselves and hoping that the world listens to them. That is the reality of Twitter, right? But Coup is the place where 1 or 2% of India, including famous folks and educated Indians, can actually come and use some of the tools that we've built to express one thought in multiple languages. And when you do that, each of those thoughts in, let's say I Coup in not just English but also Kannada and Hindi. So my English Coup will go to the English folks, English community on Coup. Hindi will go to Hindi community and Kannada will go to Kannada community. So my one thought which was restricted to English is now open to Hindi and Kannada for the first time. And the Hindi and Kannada folks can listen to, you know, maybe I'm talking about startups, maybe I'm talking about something else. So they get access to the educated as well as VIPs and, you know, everybody for the first time in their own language. And that is an experience we've.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, over to Deepthi. So, Deepthi, how's your experience been to roll out these massive infrastructure projects to the next billion users? So what goes on, let's say, to roll out Aadhaar? Right, I mean, you were there during the early days of Aadhaar. So how should one think about rolling out projects to the next billion users?
Sure. So, you know, when you're rolling out such massive projects and designing something that's population scale is also what we call, right? There are two key considerations that one need to keep in mind. One is the technology aspect of things, and second is the field operations, the groundwork that one needs to do around that. So let me talk about technology aspect. You know, Aadhaar technology is very well known. Let me also talk about some of the recent ones where, like, you know, in COVID time, the quick response that was required on how do we really respond to COVID, and how Arogya Setu, Cowin, eSanjeevani, all these apps came up, right? And I'll share some more examples on how technology-wise you really need to design your solution in such a way that a lot of unknowns exist when you're building a new solution, when you're a startup. You don't know at what point in time what scale would be required, right? So if I take Cowin example, Prime Minister's birthday, we had over 2 crores vaccination in a single day. Rest of the days around that time, the average was 20 lakh vaccination. These days it's about 4 to 5 lakh vaccination per day that's happening. right? So how do you design a solution that automatically scales to that level? And I mean, there was like, just imagine what if on Prime Minister's birthday, the commitment to do 2 crores plus vaccination, what if infrastructure creaked there and the solution did not work, right? How much of negative press that would have acquired. But the system just worked so seamlessly because the way the entire thing was designed, it's auto scaling, serverless, it just goes up and down without any hiccup. And also just imagine what, if someone had to get that entire infra in place for 2 crores vaccination, even for today's scenario of 4 to 5 lakh, right? It's such a huge waste of money. Yeah. Similarly, e-Sanjeevani also, if you look at, right, the way it's scaling up and, during lockdown, the demand goes up and so on and so forth. Another interesting solution that we are working on with one of our partners is, we talk about smart metering a lot these days, right? Now the entire thing is coming up on prepaid smart metering. Okay, a few pilots are done in a couple of districts in Bihar and these kind of places. And the user behavior pattern that was observed was in certain places where people recharge literally on a daily or a weekly basis. End of the day, once they're done with the work, whatever daily wages they got, they just go buy that coupon and they go and recharge the thing. Versus there are pockets where people just want to recharge for 1 quarter, 6 months in one time and get going with things. They don't really want to have the botheration of daily recharge. So again, how do you design entire solution for so much of unknown? Yeah, so much of uncertainty, so much of flexibility that is required. So that's one aspect. When you're designing a technology, how you are really adopting latest technology, how you're taking care of all the flexibility, scalability, unknowns that are required. And of course, that's where, like as AWS Cloud, we've been working with all these entities to make sure serverless and auto scaling and all these things come into picture. It also saves you from technology obsolescence. Tomorrow you want to do advanced analytics, AI, ML, that becomes easier. So it's a technology aspect of it. Second important aspect is, and it's not so much focused, unfortunately, I call it that technology and processes are siblings. Technology is a more glamorous sibling and gets more attention, but it's equally important to pay attention to field operations as well. So again, here I'll share some examples, some anecdotes from my UIDI time, my Aadhaar time. Okay, we had 3 key pillars of focus of Aadhaar that we had: scale, inclusion, and quality. And how do you really design your field processes to take care of those? Okay, if you talk about inclusion, you got to cater to people who have literally no biometrics. Okay, so for example, I actually sat at leprosy centers and observed those people who have no fingerprints, no digits, no eyes, nothing left. So how do you design for those? How do you design your systems to reach out, to ensure that third, fourth class kid who is getting government scholarship, she is covered as part of the scholarship program. So again, I spent a lot of time in rural areas, part of the country, in villages in Jharkhand and Tripura to understand the dynamics, how all that works and how do you cater to those. We thought of things like how do you deliver Aadhaar to the homeless. Homeless by definition, they do not have an address to which you can reach out to, right? So what field processes that you really put in place to reach out to? So for example, we looked at Delhi has ran Baseras and we picked up, those days 2010, Google Map was not that common, right? To put lat long and have it delivered. So we picked up Aishar map and we would say Aishar map, edition X, page 31, cell A14 is this person's address. So you've got to get creative along those lines.
Nice.
And I think, even,
yeah,
as part
I think
of
these
your
two guys
operations,
have the
yeah, you have examples,
have that
right?
problem,
Because,
yeah.
I mean, so, and when you go to VCs, they'll ask about a business model, they'll ask about a revenue model, they'll ask about a technology, but very few question you really on your field operations, your process is part of it. So that's my one key thing, that, recognize that technology has to be agile, scalable, flexible, a lot of unknowns that need to be catered to, and you have to focus a lot on field operations for if you're really building for the next billion, if you really want a solution to scale up to that level, field operations become very, very important aspect.
Nice. Thanks, Deepti. Yeah, next moving on to Suraj. So Suraj, you guys do a lot of deliveries, almost large percentage of e-commerce happens through delivery, and it's all over the country. Tier 1 town, Tier 2 town, Tier 4 town, and etc. So what are some of the, how are the operations different from Tier 1 to Tier 4? Or how's your approach, how's your strategy or approach, go-to-market different in those towns compared to Tier 1?
Right, so Yes, so I mean, when we started, of course, the e-commerce market itself was limited only to the top 3 metros in 2011. As we've grown, we've seen the market expand from these urban sort of centers all the way to very, very small towns or even villages today. I think in a large part of that push has come because of data availability everywhere, and also in the last 2 years because of lockdowns, people started to order online. When we go out to smaller places, I think there's a minimum volume that if we are able to get in a particular town, we can set up our own operations. But if we want to scale beyond that, where we are not getting the minimum sort of shipments required to break even, what we've started doing is we've started partnering with local entrepreneurs. And you know, while we've delivered 1.4 billion shipments in our journey till date, which is, by the way, slightly larger than the Indian population, we're now doing a large part, not a majority, but a significant portion of our deliveries through these partners. And so these are mini entrepreneurs sitting out in towns where we don't have enough volume for us to open our own operations. Otherwise, it will become unsustainable or economically unviable. And so we partner with a lot of these people out there who may be running a STD PCO in the earlier days, which is no longer applicable. So they're now migrating and started to do deliveries for us. Or somebody running a gas agency, as an example, on the side is also doing these for us, right? So creating a network of partners where you cannot be present yourself. I think that's the big thing that we've learned. The other is, of course, and you know, like Dipti had mentioned, I think it's very important that when you think about taking your business to a geographically large reach, it is very, very important that you focus on creating the right process. And I think training becomes very, very important there, because you ultimately cannot be present in every location to train the staff. So you have to design programs that can be extended very quickly and can be run by people who are managing local areas as opposed to a central team traveling the country. That allows you to scale up very, very quickly. Of course, the tech in the backend has to be able to support all of this.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'd ask the same question to you, Gunjan. So how is the tier 2 India or tier 3 India different from the tier 1? What differences are you seeing, and what opportunities are you seeing there?
Yeah. So on the opportunity side, I think you know, when back, I think 2 or 3 years back, when we were present only in maybe 20, 25, 30 cities, metros mostly, and we were not sure whether is there a market beyond these cities or not. And you know, there was no way to do that unless we tried it, right? So in a classic startup fashion, we just sit here, karke dekhte hain. And we said, let's launch the 50th city in the list. If that works, then you know, at least 20 cities are sorted. So we launched that, and we were not expecting more than maybe 100 orders a day or something like that. And then it completely surprised us. And you know, very quickly it reached 1,000 orders a day, and it kept growing. So we were like surprised that there's definitely a market. Then we launched the 300th city. And it still, you know, it took a little longer, but it still reached that milestone. You know, and till the time we reached almost 400, 500 cities, like it kept working, you know, obviously over a longer duration. So there definitely exists a large opportunity. But to be able to tap that opportunity, and now we operate in 1,000 plus cities across India. So, but the customers definitely are different. And your product also has to adapt to those, you know, their needs. And I think inclusion is what Dipti.
So how is the product different?
They're different. You know, they have a different background. They've had a different journey. They came to the internet in a different fashion compared to, you know, tier 1 users. They probably started using internet first on WhatsApp or Facebook. Mobile was the first device that they used.
So is Zomato different for the next billion users?
Yeah, so we have to you know, keep thinking about those users and keep building our product for those users. So for example, features like voice search. So they're not used to typing out their search queries, but they are comfortable speaking out their you know, queries.
Nice.
So and we are seeing great adoption of that. Things like you know, vernacular, or even even in English, people are comfortable typing or they prefer typing chai rather than tea, right? So our product needs to be able to understand that and give out better results. And even their use cases are different. So maybe for a lot of our users in tier 1, tier 2 cities, it's more about convenience and daily food needs and all of those things. And for a lot of people in the, let's say, 500 plus cities, it's something like an occasion where someone in the family has a birthday, right? And they want to celebrate that by ordering something. So and we were also not sure whether these are small cities, do they need someone, a delivery person, to bring the food to them? Why can't they just go and get the food? But all of that it works, so people need that that option as well.
Nice. So Apramaya, so it looks like a large market out there, and all of you have presence in the next billion users. So what's the catch? Like what are the challenges? Like what's something that we have to be wary when we create a product or a solution for the next billion users?
Yeah, so I think at least in terms of questions that we get asked is about monetization, right? You'll get a lot of users, but will they spend enough? Do they have the spending power so that you can get advertisers to come and pay to target them? So if you have to give a plain vanilla answer, they can't be compared in the same light as the city users, right? There will always be different things that they spend on. One of my favorite examples is that if I call the phone number of a driver in Bangalore, a song will play, right? If I call your number, no song will play, right? He pays 30 rupees a month for that. And you ask us, 30 rupees is too much to play a song on the phone, right? So I think there will be different reasons why they spend. There'll be a lot more, they're emotional spenders, which means something that gives them, this kind of a personality expression of which song I like might be worth 30 rupees a month for them, whereas it's not for us because we have other places in which we can express, right? So I think there will be very detailed, you have to get into extreme detail to find out these use cases. The English users will spend in the thousands and 10,000s. The language users will probably spend in the tens and hundreds.
Nice.
But the numbers are much higher. And this tens and hundreds won't remain tens and hundreds. They will get used to spending, they will get more access to money, and then that behavior will extend into hundreds and thousands as well, right? So I think that is something that all companies that are building for $1 billion, they have to kind of tweak and find new insights to unleash this new source of money.
Very nice, very nice. There's a fantastic insight that the 30 rupees that they spend, and what you said about they being emotional spenders, I think that's a great insight. So how do you gather these insights? Like you have, like we always say, hey, stay closer to the customer, right? I mean, do you have offices in those, right? I mean, in the tier 2, tier 3 India, or like how do you gather these insights?
I think there's no one way. We keep visiting smaller towns, we keep talking to people there. We see behavior on the app. We get feedback on email, on our Play Store. So we take every feedback extremely seriously because, when we were building Taxi for Sure, it was building for us. Half of it at least was for the urban user, the other half was for the driver. Here, it's almost like building for somebody else all the time, right? Except for the English user on the platform who's reaching out to the non-English users. That's the use case that we relate to directly. But all other use cases, we are trying to learn from the user directly.
Got it. Okay, so it looks like monetization is a big problem when you're building for the next billion people.
Communicating the solution. It's not a problem.
Okay.
As in finding and communicating that solution to people who think it's a problem is a problem.
You mean the investors? Okay, so good. Okay, we'll move on. So Deepti, Deepthi is in a very enviable place, perhaps. So her revenue comes from the governments to who you sell the solution. So could you just give us some insight on, let's say, I create a solution, let's say a DG locker or something like that, or a solution for a smart cities, which will impact the next billion users. But I'll have to sell it to the government, and then government actually implements the solution. So how to make, like, how do I go about thinking through the revenues, like any anecdotes, how much should I bill, how do I make money there? You're still building for the next billion, but through via channel.
Yeah. So, I'll share some examples from startups itself, right? How can startups work better with government? See, first of all, what we recognize is that, it's actually important for both startups and government to come together, especially startups who are in impact area, because government needs startups to get innovation into their solutions in the citizen services, and startups working in impact area, they need government to scale up their solution. In fact, that's the reason we created a program, especially around this called Startup Ramp, where we work on how do we really, get the government and startup together. What works in government is, government has these champions who are wanting to try out new areas. And having worked at UIDI myself, ringside, I have seen that there are officers, there are people who are always willing to try out new things and go, and there are people who are not wanting to do things. You have both kind of people in government setup. So to identify those champions who are willing to, experiment, take your solution, do some experiment on ground and help you grow big, right? And I think those avenues are opening more and more now. THub itself is an example, right? Like we recently launched a drone accelerator with Telangana government and THub, where the drone solutions are going to get piloted by the traffic department and agriculture department and things like that. Yeah, and in government precedence works best. So when you're working, so one is identify the avenues through which you can avail of such programs, get to the first couple of pilots with government, and make sure that when you do these pilots, you get some paper trail of this. Even if you don't get paid, at least a certificate which says that you have done this, this is the outcome that you have, get it referenceable as we say in public sector parlance, right? Where you can go and quote that you have done that work somewhere else. That's a very important thing, that getting your first customer, getting to do these field pilots, doing business validation on the ground, getting on paper that you have worked with a certain government department, that's one thing that helps you set the base. I think the second important aspect becomes a partnership. I personally believe, and my experience says that, be it, I've worked extensively in urban, rural utilities, all these segments. If you look at from government side, all these projects are pretty large, mega projects, and multiple solutions need to come together to meet the end objective. Typically one startup solution cannot really fulfill these. So what happens, and government can't really take that risk, right? And startups also can't really go that scale in one go. So therefore, what governments end up doing is they do these RFPs where is the concept of master system integrator that come into picture, and then they get multiple of these solutions together. So in fact, if you look at I call my startup ramp program a three-legged tool. How do you bring government, which is a demand side, startup the supply side, and system integrator with a fulfillment side? How do you bring these three together? So the partnerships angle, that becomes very, very important. So like we work with the likes of L&T, Bell in smart cities area. Yeah, similarly, we work with others in utility segment. So it's very important to recognize two things: identify champions, identify entities through which you can go and do these first pilots, first business validation, get a paper trail that you have done that work. And second is then, look at how do you do partnership with system integrators, larger organization that eases out your go-to-market story.
Got it. Yeah, thanks. And coming to both of you, you have on-ground presence, and now we're discussing about profitability and revenue. So you need a critical mass of activity in a particular town for you to be profitable. So how are you thinking about that, and what are the challenges, what are the opportunities to get to that critical mass there? Yeah. And then after that, we'll open up for questions, one or two questions.
I'll go first there. Like I was describing to you the earlier example where in smaller towns today where we don't have enough volume of e-commerce going in through our network, we look for micro entrepreneurs. For them, it becomes an additional source of revenue without having to invest in the fixed cost, because they're already owning that shop or already sitting out of that shop, right? So they're just adding on 2 or 3 people to deliver shipments and get paid for that additionally. I think trying to keep finding solutions that help you get to your desired cost of operation becomes important. So in this case, in our case, partners work. In some other cases, you might want to do like a floating manager come delivery boy combination. So the same person, you don't have a dedicated manager all day, but the same person sends everybody out and then goes out for delivery to reduce your fixed cost, right? Or you might want to co-locate with another business in that city and say, I'm going to pay half the rent because anyways your space is half utilized. So trying to think of these innovative ways to bring about, you reduce your cost of operation.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And I think to say that the next billion audience is not monetizable would be wrong. Like it is monetizable. We just have to understand and figure out the ways, in which we can monetize them. So for us, even in very, very small cities, it's not that people are not eating food outside. They go to the local eatery shop, they go to the local dhabas, and they still spend that money, right? We are just making it more convenient and giving them a different mode of experiencing that. So, so it's not like people are not spending that money. It's just that the channel is different. So it's just that you have to figure out what works for that audience and for you, and then build that solution.
Okay, got it. Thanks. So do you have any questions in the audience now? Yeah, we'll pass the mic.
My question to Gunjan, you talked about that you are trying to implement the voice assistant service in Zomato that kind of help customer what they want to order, chai and tea, those kind of keywords. My question is talking about the personalization experience that we want to build to a customer. There is a section in the app where it says special instruction if I want to order. So that itself I find is a kind of piece of crank where I want to customize my order, and that itself is not getting fulfilled. So how are you going to solve that root problem where app take the instructions, but the delivery boy or the restaurant are not following that order first? And do you also think that Indian market is more of discount driven, because I see a lot of bigger widgets, 60% off, 30%, rather than building a personalized experience in terms of food? So what's your take on that, Gunjan? Thank you.
To answer your first question, I think a lot of it comes down to training, training the entire ecosystem. So we work with, 3 large, you can call it sections. One is the customer, but we also have delivery partners and the restaurant partners, right? So all of them need to understand the entire journey to be able to provide the best experience that the user is expecting. And that comes from, continuous training, policy changes, and all of that over time. And that is what we keep trying to do. For the second part, again, I don't think Indian, definitely discounts is one way to attract the customers, but not all customers are discount driven. Again, for such a large user base, you can't put one solution and expect that everyone will it works for everyone. You have to break down your user base, segment it out, understand what works for which user, personalize the experience for them. There are premium users, there are deal seekers, there are repeat users who basically, there are explorers who want to try different things every time. There are people who try the same thing every time. So understanding that from maybe data, talking to people, whatever means, and then building solutions for them is what increases the growth.
We'll take one last question from that.
So, hi Gunjan, this is Sriram. I have one question in perspective of building to the next billion. As Zomato has a side venture in the name of Hyperpure, so what do you think is going to be the scenario for in the space of B2B, as you can cater to your restaurant partners as well as in the B2C sector in perspective to Hyperpure? Thank you.
So again, Hyperpure is purely B2B. It's basically where we procure food, not food, but raw materials for the restaurants from various sources, and then restaurants can buy it from us. So that is something that we it's very, very important for us, both from the point of view of solving for the entire supply chain, and we want to go very, very deep and procure directly from the person who is growing it and provide the best quality material to the restaurants. The intent is again, like if we can influence the quality of the supply, we can influence the quality of the output as well, and then that will increase the trust in people eating out more than at home, right? So it's a long play.
I think we're done. Yeah, thanks everyone. They're here, so you can catch up with them outside this thing. But thanks a lot, all of you. There's a very good takeaway from their stories. So if you look at them, they're decacons and unicorns and sunicons, all of them here. But if you look at how they started off, they all started off with something else, right? So for example, Zomato, you all know Zomato. I mean, many of us who are old enough know Zomato was like a restaurant review platform. And then from there, they figured out an opportunity, jumped into this, and now it's a decacon, right? Similar story with delivery. Delivery, I know the early days, right? I mean, you're doing the hyperlocal delivery. I somehow got your pitch those days, saying hyperlocal delivery, which is a big thing now, but they were very quick enough to figure out that, hey, there's another big wave that's happening in e-commerce, and they jumped into that, and then became again a public listed company now. We all know the story of Amazon, from where to how AWS is actually the real powerhouse in Amazon. And of course, even with Koo, Aprameya, you started off with Vocal, right, which was a Quora for the next billion vernacular users. And from there, they were like quick enough to figure out another big opportunity, which is the Koo microblogging platform for India. So, I mean, all these stories actually, I think, give us a clue as to how to build a decacon or a unicorn, right? Just get started, keep your eyes open for the next big opportunities out there, and you will get there. Would you all agree to that? Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Give them a big hand.
Thank you so much. I request you all to please stay back on the stage. I request Mr. Paneer Selvan, Chief Innovation Officer of THub, to kindly hand over token of our gratitude on behalf of the entire THub management and government of Telangana to our speakers and our moderators. Thank you so much for the brilliant, brilliant session. Yes, please. Applause for a brilliant, brilliant session, building for the next billion.